From Cali to Tally, it's time to wake up. WarChant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source, and this is Wake Up War Chant. Now here's WarChant.com's Aslan Hudjavandi and Corey Clark.
Regulators, mount up.
It was a clear black night, a clear white moon. Warren G was on the streets.
Wake up! Oh, you're so confused right now. You just heard the man say, here's Corey Aslan, but you just heard Warren G regulate. So you're like, what does it mean? Is it Corey? Is it Ira? Is it Corey? Is it Ira? Behind door number 2. Number 1 in your hearts. Ira Schofel, managing editor of WarChant.com, joining me here on Wake Up War Chant on this Tuesday. Ira, thanks so much for being here. How are you, friend?
I'm good, man. You wouldn't play regulators for Corey, would you?
No. Well, you know, if that's what the big guy wants.
Kind of our thing.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's the bat signal. Can't mess the wires up for the people. They gotta know the big dogs come and eat when they hear that song. Folks, a reminder: Thursday we'll have a Renegade Express. Leave your questions and comments on the Tribal Council. Friday will be a phone call. Friday, give us a call 850-792-5730. Also on the schedule for this week, tomorrow, Wednesday, we'll have Michael Langston, WarChant.com recruiting analyst. Obviously a very big game on Saturday, but maybe even bigger for the future aspirations of Florida State and Willie Taggart, as they're going to have several 5-star recruits, I think, on campus for that game. And then Thursday or Friday, we'll also mix in, we're hoping, a phone interview with Larry Williams, who runs the Clemson website. What is it, Tiger Illustrated? That's the name of it, right, Ira? TigerIllustrated.com. So
sounds right, but if we're wrong, yeah, I think that's right. Or it's just Clemson.rivals.com.
Yeah, something like that. So, yeah, Larry's part of the family. He's been covering Clemson forever. We'll get his thoughts. Maybe he can let us know what Florida State has to do to beat Clemson, and we can relay that to Willie and company later in the week. We'll talk to the offense later today, but we spoke to Willie on Monday. Seems to be in good spirits, Ira. You're the body language guy. You don't have to break it down that way, but anything that catch your ear, that caught your interest or you thought was of importance that Willie talked about and discussed in his weekly press conference on Monday?
I thought I thought he took the right tone with the fans. Unlike Nick Saban, who chastised the students for not coming to their games, he made a couple of, in his opening statement, then midway through it, he found an opportunity to say, get to sleep early Friday night, wake up, come out to the game, we need you. And I do think it's important. I mean, if you think about the game this past Saturday, that was a pretty good crowd except for the students. I mean, it was probably about half full. And talking to people at FSU, the students claimed all 15,000 of their tickets, but only maybe half of them showed up. And it's not the end of the world. It was Wake Forest. It's fine. It's not like anybody's mad at them. But this is a game where you really could use the crowd. I mean, and again, from a competitive standpoint, I know coaches will downplay playing on the road, but we all know it's a big deal. And certainly in a game like this where you need everything you could get against a heavy favorite, I thought it was clever on his part, I guess, to make that plea. And I thought he struck the right, I think he struck the right chord by not chastising fans, but just kind of, hey, it would be great if you guys could be there.
Yeah, I guess, it's still the honeymoon phase. When you've won 5 national titles, I guess you feel like you can call anybody out and no one's going to get mad at you. But yeah, I was thinking about that today too. I feel like Doak, even when things are rolling along with Jameis and at the height of Jimbo's tenure, like I still never thought of Doak as being some sort of intimidating top 10 environment for people to roll into. It feels like it's been a long time. I feel like back in the 90s it was that way, but so much of that was obviously Florida State's reputation preceded themselves. They already were up by 6 points when teams got off the bus. But, yeah, that'll probably be one of the important things that can go towards helping them pull off the upset is obviously having a nice partisan crowd on hand. And I'll give them credit. I think the students will show up. It's a number 2 team in the nation. It is a noon game, but it's still the number 2 team in the nation. And, it's the last real good home game before the Gators roll into town. No offense to Steve Adazio and Boston College, but I would assume the students will come out pretty strong. They were good for the rest of the games this year. Homecoming, for whatever reason, yeah. I don't know. They didn't come out in full force for the Wake Forest game, but I've got faith they'll be all right. So
otherwise, and then the other thing I thought, to touch on what you said about him being in good spirits, I do think that, he made it very clear a couple times that, Florida State's not David against Goliath here. Yeah, they may be big underdogs. Yeah, Clemson may be the program, the top dog in the ACC right now. But I thought when he said he thinks Florida State's defensive line is every bit as talented as Clemson's. I think that's something that will probably get some play up in South Carolina. I thought he also, when somebody asked him about this stretch of games, these teams, these 5, well thought of teams and 3 or 4 ranked teams, his response was, yeah, but they've got to play a tough team too when they play us. So whether or not Florida State can back that up, we'll see. But I think it's a good approach for him as the head coach to, I don't think Florida State needs to be poor mouthing. I think Florida State should have, a little bit of confidence and swagger about it. And I think he's trying to present that. And, he can do it right now at least, because they're at least coming off of a win, and they've won 3 of the last 4 games.
What did you end up sort of walking away from the Wake Forest game? Did you feel any different the day after? I know in the 3-2 run you wrote, or the 3-2-1 rather, you wrote pretty extensively about the Wake Forest game and sort of how it might recalibrate your expectations. But do you have a better feel, or I don't want to say better feel because the team seems to be so week to week, but do you have a more optimistic, encouraging sort of energy about this team after seeing the way they performed against Wake Forest? What were your thoughts on that game?
I don't know if there was anything like that I walked away from that game saying, oh, wow, this team is much further along than I thought or anything. I did think it was another positive step, and they avoided a pitfall that I thought was something they would have to avoid if they're going to, try to get to a bowl. And that was, I really thought they'd be prime between the heartbreak of that Miami game. I mean, that was a devastating loss. And I know for a fact that, a lot of the players on the team took that really hard. I mean, not only did Willie tell us that, but, if you talk to other people, I mean, the players, they really laid on the line. They thought they had that win. And then to have it just pulled, like the rug pulled out from underneath them so quickly, they took that hard. And then sometimes when you have that happen, and then it affects you in the next couple of practices, maybe you're not as focused, and then you have a bye week. We have the hurricane. Kids are flying home. I just kind of wondered how focused this team would be, and they weren't obviously super focused the first drive or two. But once they did and played so well, I think it shows that they at least practiced well the preceding week. I mean, you can't play as well as they did between really the end of the first quarter till early to middle of the fourth quarter. They played by far their best football of the season, and on both sides of the ball. And for you to do that, I think it shows that they've been practicing well. So I think for me, it's just kind of another step in the right direction, I think, whereas it could have been a step in the wrong direction, obviously. So that's a positive. But as far as, thinking this team's better than it is, or better than I thought it was, I don't know. I mean, I think the offensive line, at least, it seems to know what they're doing now. I think that's been a couple weeks now, 2 or 3 weeks in a row now, where you're starting to see growth there, which I think will help a lot. And then, the Cam Akers thing, and I know, you and Corey talked about it. Just Cam looking like Cam again is a big deal. The one thing I did want to ask you, man, I listened to your show yesterday, and the way you are trying to evaluate the team, like in each week as its own entity, I don't know if that's fair, because it's like, where do you start? Where's the bar? Like, where do you start if you're not comparing from week to week over the course of a season? If you're just looking at this game, what's your what are you relating it to?
How dare you come on my show, Ira, and criticize the way I think? How dare you?
I just wanted to know. No, I was waiting for Corey to ask, and he never did. I don't know if he listened. I don't want to break this to you, Aslan, but I'm not sure he listens to you.
Really? I never thought that. That never crossed my mind ever. No, I was actually going to ask you that same sort of thing. Well, Corey's talked about the fact that this season to him is like a throwaway season to a certain degree. Now, I don't necessarily maybe agree with that, but there is a certain rationale that I can maybe follow. I think to me it's just looking at each of these games, seeing what they can do well in certain situations. Like, you have a situational scrimmage. They do situational things in practice, 2-minute drill, whatever you have. But to me, that's what it is. It's just like pulling pieces from each of these games, and then once the season is over, it's kind of assessing what I've seen over 12 games in 13 weeks. Like, I don't want to make this like the stock market where it's like, okay, they're up, the stock's down, the stock's up, the stock's down, because there's just so many other variables in play. Like you talked about, this isn't being played in a vacuum. So to me, it's like I'm just taking information from every game that I see. Again, like I was really encouraged by the Miami game because that was a game that they were supposed to get throttled in, maybe even get embarrassed, and then they come out and play really, really well for 3 quarters. And, again, he called up a really good play at a really crucial time that could have maybe sealed the game. That, to me, is encouraging and makes me feel better more so than any bad vibes from that game. But, I don't factor in what they did against Louisville. Louisville, to me, that was just – to win the game in the fashion they did, that was good. That showed you the ability for them to rally back. I mean, they were down 21-7, but for so many times, this team being down 21-7 was like a death sentence. So the fact that they were able to bounce back, those things, there's just pieces I'm taking away from each game, as opposed to seeing because hey, I mean, I thought this was going to be a 10-win team against Virginia Tech. So the fact that they come out and they play so poorly, and that goes to my fact that I think there's enough talent on this team that they should have been able to win 10 games. Well, then what? I'm going to reset the bar because, maybe lethal simplicity is not as easy to install in one offseason as Willie had thought. Because it's not so much, us throwing 8, 9, 10-win predictions out there. It seemed like Willie felt optimistic about what he had going to the season as well, too. So, he said as much Monday during the press conference when I asked him about, what could it do for this team to just play kind of dominant football. And again, not everybody that listens to this, read the piece I did, but, in the second and third quarters, the numbers, what Florida State did offensively and defensively in those 2 quarters were staggering. I mean, Florida State averaged almost 9 yards a play, or maybe over 9 yards a play. And Wake Forest was around 2 yards a play for 2 full quarters. I mean, really, and then it actually started a little bit before that and ended a little bit after that. But I just want to know, what can that do for these guys to at least give them the confidence that, hey, that's in us. And he said that, he made a comment along the lines of, it kind of shows them that they can play the way we expected to at the beginning of the season. So I think you're right. I mean, I think he did. I think he thought they were going to be, all guns, blasting, from week 1, which, as we talked about before, is a little disconcerting that he misread this team that much. But I also think it speaks to the fact that, there is talent there. And it's just for whatever reason, whether it's the old guys not buying in enough, whether it's the new guys not learning it quickly, whether it's just that all coming down to the offensive line, it hasn't come together. But, I thought, that comment proved exactly what you're saying. He did think this team was going to be a lot better than it was. But I guess my thing is, are you going to keep holding that against them every week? I mean, once we found out that that's not what this team is after the first 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, to me, it's like, I don't know, if every week you're thinking, okay, this is going to be the week they play to that level, I mean, you may be waiting the whole year. Yeah, I don't think they're ever going to. That's my whole thing. I don't know if is the point of the season to want this team to play the best their best game of the season, the last Saturday in November, or hopefully a bowl game somewhere in December. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's just show that once you do have the right pieces in place, that you can make this into the winning kind of program that it's traditionally and historically been, and that's your goal. And I don't know if that's like me talking out of both sides of my mouth. I hope it's not, because I'm not trying to. But, again, I just think there's certain things that we can see. I think him throwing Trayshawn Harrison out there in certain situations and seeing that kid grow, I pull that away from the Wake Forest game more so than like.
So what you're –
you go ahead.
So you're using this whole season to just evaluate the coaching staff.
I don't – that sounds unfair, I guess that's kind of what it sounds like I'm doing. I mean, to a certain degree, yeah, because I want to see some of these freshmen that they recruited heavily. A lot of the freshmen obviously were guys that committed to Jimbo, but Willie was able to keep them in the fold. But guys like Trayshawn Harrison, Jaden Woodby, those are guys that they went out on their own and got, and those kids are performing well. That makes me feel good about the way they're able to sort of, evaluate talent. I've never seen Willie play in a big time game. I've never seen him coach in a big time game. I don't know if the Miami game was the biggest game he's ever coached in, at least as a head coach. I mean, I know at Western Kentucky when he was a coordinator under Jack Harbaugh, they actually won a national title. But I mean, I think the Miami game is a little bit of a bigger deal than 100 yards of hate versus Middle Tennessee State or the war for I-4 against UCF. So to see him be able to coach well in a big game, to me, these are questions that need to be answered, because It's. And I'm not saying it was a good hire or a bad hire, but Florida State was in a really tough spot to get somebody to fill some pretty decent sized shoes. And people want to look at his overall record. I don't think that's fair. So I think it's looking at him into these certain situations and seeing how he kind of can on the fly fix things will give us a good idea for what this is going to look like when he does get the players he wants. Because Corey's point is, listen, he's going to get guys, he's going to get the right kind of players, or he's going to at least get the upper echelon guys that Nick Saban wants just because of his charisma. Well, if there's talent that's going to be here, well, how is he going to be able to coach him up? And that's kind of what I want to see, is how is he going to be able to manage that? Because Lord knows there's been all sorts of highly recruited kids that have been through this program, and not all of them have lived up to their expectations. So it's just kind of seeing how he manages these situations. And to, like you said, it's a heartbreaking loss against Miami. You had that game won. Everybody on that sideline at some point in the second half was thinking, how awesome is this plane ride back to Tallahassee going to be? Like, I can't wait to text this person and celebrate the win. Like, they all thought they had that game won, and they didn't. And to see them bounce back, I guess there's a little bit of a measure there that you're going from the Miami to Wake Forest game. But to me, it's more of a situation. Like, you lost a big game. How do you respond to it, as opposed to did you grow from week 6 to week 7?
No, I hear you. And I think it's look, I mean, I think both approaches are fine. I wasn't trying to, say it like that's awful that you're doing it that way. I mean, I just think it's, I think that each of these, especially these last few games, I think you're going to get a really good feel for what you're looking for, I think, in terms of how they approach these games. Because I think this game is fascinating against Clemson because, I don't think it's Willie's nature to try to really shorten a game and try to, do the things Jimbo used to do a lot of times when he was probably a little bit outmanned and, not let the offense beat the defense. Because earlier this season, I think Willie was guilty of that. I think he tried to do a little too much too early, and that led to a lot of those turnovers and penalties. So I'm curious how he handles this game. And I think, that is something we all should watch, is how does he approach this game? Does he give, Florida State the best chance to win in a really difficult circumstances? Not to say he should win the game, but does he do everything that gives them the best possible chance to win? My whole thing with the judging the growth and the development from week to week is more about, it's the same type of approach. I mean, the same type of thought process. Are they teaching these guys? Are they getting through to them? Are they communicating what they want? And will it work? Is this system going to work? Are they going to put these guys, are they getting the right guys to play? And are they putting them in the right positions to play? So I do think you can do it both ways. I think we're probably getting to the same place, but looking at it two different ways to get there.
Yeah, and part of it, too, for me is like that Syracuse game looks so bad. I almost feel like if you're going to judge him on a week-to-week basis, well, the bar was set so low after that Syracuse game. Like, I feel bad giving you credit for being Northern Illinois after you look so bad against Syracuse. But that game does feel, like a lifetime ago, just in terms of them being able to fall into such a deep hole and then look so sort of helpless in a game. So that does feel far away, which is an encouraging thing. But to the Clemson point, I don't know let me ask you this, and maybe we can pivot off of it. Like, would you be more surprised if this was a close game or if it was a lopsided Clemson victory? Because I feel like a lot of people think that Clemson is just going to come in here and their strength on Florida State's weakness is just what's going to play out. But I don't know. I think the way he showed that he coached the team up against Miami, like, I'd be more surprised if Clemson rolls this team. I'm not saying I'm expecting a Roberto Aguayo field goal to decide this game, but I think it'll be under the spread. I'd feel like more so likely than them getting Louisville throttled.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you. If it does if they do pull away, maybe that happens late. And I just think that you're right. I mean, Florida, obviously, Clemson's great strength is that defensive front. Florida State's big weakness is the offensive front. We can all see that. But on the other side of it is, Clemson has to play offense too. And I don't know that they're going to be able to run the ball against Florida State the way they have against some other teams. And they do have a true freshman quarterback, and that kid is super talented. But, 8 months ago he was playing in front of what size crowds. Really the only big hostile environment he's played in was at Texas A&M, and he didn't do very well. He had the first touchdown pass, and after that he didn't do anything. So, I don't know that Doak Campbell, it's going to be 70,000 as opposed to 105,000 or whatever. And if it's a late arriving crowd, then maybe it won't make that big of an impact. But I think that if Florida State hits that kid, we looked at all the blitzes that Harlan Barnett's drawn up and the different ways he's pressured quarterbacks. Now, Trevor Lawrence gets the ball out of his hands quickly, and they're going to do that because they're going to know what Florida State's approach is going to be. So they're going to get the ball out of his hands quickly, and then it's up to FSU's defensive backs to make the tackle and not let those little hitches and bubble screens turn into bigger plays. But if they can do that and force him to actually sit back and take some time in the pocket and they can affect him, now you might have a real game. And so, but the key is you can't lose it on offense. And I think that's going to be the one thing I really want to see from Willie, because earlier this season, I felt like they lost some of those games on offense. These last few games, they really didn't have, they weren't playing that type of competition. And, the Miami game, they had the big lead, and then they end up, at the end, they basically did lose on offense. So I think that to me is going to be interesting to see how Willie handles that against, a really high-level team. But I think they're going to play well. I
agree. I feel like both teams are going to have the same offensive game plan. And I don't know, it's unfair that I think they're both going to have the same offensive game plan in terms of they're going to show great respect to the opposing defensive line. It's going to be a lot of quarterback has to make the right read. Unfortunately, it seems like Clemson probably has a quarterback who's more willing and maybe more able to do some RPO stuff and maybe burn a defense with his legs. But that's going to be kind of the interesting thing to me. I feel like whatever Clemson's game plan is going to be in terms of trying to get good matchups on the outside, running tempo, putting them on their heels to avoid the pass rush from Brian Burns and not try to be silly and run inside power up against Marvin Wilson. I think that's Florida State's same game plan too, is try to get stuff on the outside quickly if you're going to do anything, and then try to get matchups with guys like Tamori and Terry on maybe undersized cornerback. So I don't want to say it's going to be like a chess game, but I really think it's going to unfortunately for Florida State be a team executing your vision, but they've had their vision, their system installed and implemented for so much longer, and they have better talent on their offensive line than you're going to have on your offensive line. So that's ultimately, it's going to be the bad part for Florida State. But it's going to be interesting to see, I think, again, two teams not equally talented, but trying to execute what I think are going to be similar game plans.
Yeah, and what I said about Trevor Lawrence is, I do think that if they can affect him, they can hit him a lot, which is what Willie said on Monday as well. I think that could alter things. But, when it comes to the stuff you just talked about, the quick passes, the bubble screens, the RPO stuff, I mean, you can tell that guy has run that system. He knows what he's doing, and he gets the ball out of his hands so quickly. I mean, the difference between, and again, this isn't DeAndre Francois' fault. He just started playing this. He wasn't even in spring practice. But, the difference, I'd love to see a stopwatch, and the difference between when he gets a snap and turns and fires to a bubble screen or something on the sideline versus Trevor Lawrence. Kind of like a cat timing a catcher, getting the ball second base.
Right.
I mean, it looks like Trevor Lawrence, man, it is so quick. And that's going to be, a challenge. And, and Clemson, we'll see, again, they know their system. It's going to be up to Florida State's DBs to make some plays. And they you like these young guys, A.J. Litton and Asante Samuel, and, of course, Stanford Samuels and Hampson Nasruddin. And, they've got a bunch of DBs that they like, Levante Taylor. But they're going to have to be really physical to bring those guys down and to beat blocks on the perimeter.
Yeah, I love the talent that Florida State has in the secondary, but for some reason, those first two drives still just make me feel very unsettled heading into the Clemson game. I know they figured it out. They stopped doing those mass substitutions, but to see a team like Wake Forest kind of move with such ease, 7 days before you have Clemson coming to town, and then the secondary is what kind of looked to be confused, is a little bit worrisome. But you'd hope that, as much as we talk about the offensive line being a weak point, that hopefully they'll figure out something to keep the linebackers less exposed, and maybe these defensive backs can just at least be settled in a little bit more and figure out their responsibilities, because Yeah, I mean, like Levante Taylor, I mean, this guy's supposed to be, had first-round grade going to the season. I mean, shouldn't one half of the field not have any sort of, you should have one side of your field pretty much covered and not, no anxieties on that side where Levante's at. And I know that's unfair to him to put those kind of expectations, but, it's been so up and down. It felt like he might have turned a corner going to that Louisville game because versus Louisville and Miami, we never heard his name being called out, but Wake Forest saw something and pounced on it. Now, credit to Florida State for figuring it out, but I just feel like Clemson probably has way more plan B and C than Wake Forest is ever going to have. But we'll see how it plays out, obviously, with them on defense. Offensively, with Florida State's offensive line, Gene asked Willie about, that was the seventh? 7 games, and it's the 7th different combination they've had starting on the offensive line. And Willie kind of joked.
That's what he said, yeah.
Yeah, and Willie sort of joked, well, knock on wood, if no one gets hurt, this should be, the first time that we've had the same line go into a game. Like, for you, do you think they're understanding assignment more? Like, was that the problem earlier in the season for the offensive line? To me, it's always just been, like, physicality. I just feel like they've never been able to hold up well to the point of attack. But I don't know, maybe so much.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's some
maybe.
physicality, but also, I know for a fact there were a lot of there's a lot of confusion early, and a lot of times where we saw, and we all criticized an individual player. For example, I know like earlier this season there was a game when Derek Kelly was at right tackle, and I think Mike Arnold was at right guard, and I know that Mike Arnold. There were several times where it looked like Derek Kelly was getting beat because he was late getting over to the guy coming in that gap between the guard and the tackle. And, I found out later talking to people, no, that really was the guard's responsibility. That was Mike Arnold's guy, that Derek Kelly's supposed to get the guy outside of him if there is anything. And so they did have a lot of miscommunication things. And again, I mean, you could, ultimately, that's on the coaching staff to make sure those guys know exactly what they're doing. But I think that was, I think Willie's made the comment a few times that early on, the players would panic. I think he made that comment on Monday that earlier this season they didn't have a great understanding of things. So when they would get into a game and things weren't exactly what they expected, they would just kind of panic and just kind of become their own worst enemy. They were so mentally gummed up that they really didn't even know what they were supposed to be doing. And, now I think that they at least know who they're going to get. And I think they at least know their responsibilities. And that's a big difference. I mean, it's the difference between somebody getting a free run at DeAndre versus at least you hold them up for a second. At least you can function in that environment. So I do think they've gotten better. And I think that, these guys, I think there's a commonality between the guys who are out there also when you talk about physicality, not that they're all as strong as they need to be, but I think Brady Scott is kind of a scrappy guy. I think he's going to fight. If he's engaged with the lineman, he's going to compete. I think Mike Arnold has that ability. I think, Eberle's a solid college football center. I think
Don't say that.
Cole Minshew is playing pretty well. And Derek Kelly's going to give you a good, honest day's work. So, I mean, those guys are at least, I think, competing. Now, whether or not they can compete with these guys is a whole different story. They may not be able to physically slow this pass rush down, but then it's going to be up to Willie Taggart to, play call and help them out as well.
I think that's a really good point, Iron. It's like it's right in front of your face sometimes. It's so obvious. I mean, the fact that they've been having to shuffle everybody across different spots on the line. This guy's played left guard or right guard. They're going back and forth. The fact that they've got at least 2 straight weeks, these guys, this is who we're going out there with, U5, and your responsibility at that particular spot. I know they need to cross-train and know what, sometimes, at least with Trickett and Jimbo, they had to know so many of their other teammates' responsibilities. But I feel like a lot of what they're doing now is just like, know your job, worry about that, and things will work out better. So the fact that they're going to have 2 consecutive weeks of that sort of, continuity, that's a strong thing. And it's bizarre. I talked about this with Corey one time. Like, when you start talking about these guys individually, like Derek Kelly's a pretty darn good right tackle. Like, he's going to block his rear end off for you. Cole Minshew is consistently one of the higher-rated guys for Florida State on the offensive line when it comes to the Pro Football Focus stuff. Alec Eberle, however maligned he is for some people, seems to be a good enough center, a slightly above average college football center. And then Mike Arnold's going to compete, and like you said, Brady Scott's got some, he's got a little fight in him. That these guys individually seem to be pretty good, average to above average, or at least adequate. But for some reason, when all 5 of them would be out there, it was a below average product. But hopefully, with these 5 guys being out there side by side for they'll be going on 80, 90, 110 reps in a row midway through the Clemson game, that there's going to be more productivity and more stability.
Yeah, I don't think that I think the way they played. I think as a group was not indicative probably of the real talent level. I mean, they look like they had never played football before earlier this season, and that's not the case. And I think it was a combination of a new system, a lot of new guys playing together that were differently. Now, again, the problem is, can they move the line? Well, they're probably not going to move the line this week. They're probably not going to get tough rushing yardage, between the tackles. But at least if you just don't have the complete breakdowns, and I think you're right. I think that part of it's playing together. It would be great if they could have Landon Dickerson back. I don't think that's happening anytime soon. So this is the new reality. But I do think at least that group, and I think Bavion Johnson playing some in that game Saturday maybe he's a guy that you could kind of rotate in a little bit as well if somebody's struggling, to give you another option. But it seems like these guys give them a much better chance than what they had, just even a few weeks ago.
Hey, do me a favor, Ira. If you're going to do a Henshaw's house, can you ask George, what do NFL or what do offensive assistants do when they know that they probably can't get a lot of push? I wonder, if he'll have the sort of ideas that we'll probably be expecting to see in terms of how they're going to kind of compensate for that. I mean, that's a natural sort of a curiosity, I would imagine, going to this game against Clemson, right?
Yeah, and I'm supposed to talk to him today, so I will see if he's happy to talk about that. Yeah, I'm sure it's something that happens all the time, and there are probably things that we mentioned that make sense, but there's probably other things as well. So yeah, no, I'll definitely ask him and see if he'll expound on that. All
right, didn't mean to tell you how to do your job, Ira. Don't ever let me tell you how to do your job.
No, I appreciate it, man.
All right, hey man, let's go rendezvous at the Al Dunlap practice fields and talk to Walt Bell and his offense, shall we, Ira?
I can't wait, man.
He's the managing editor of WarChant.com, Ira Schofel. Thanks for listening to Wake Up War Chant, folks. We'll catch up with you all tomorrow.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.